Hi guys, it's Ray here from Man City Fan TV. Now you might have seen a report this morning on the BBC website where it was detailing some differences in the way clubs report crowds, their attendances. Now we've known or suspected for many years that reporting of actual crowds can differ somewhat to what we as fans see in the ground. And when we talk about this subject of the difference between people paying through the turnstiles and actual reporting of fans, Peter Swale's name is always seems to get mentioned in the background. Now the BBC have used freedom of information requests to councils and the police to try and get a handle on this difference. Now the headline of this report starts with West Ham. Now Newham Council apparently have said the average attendance at West Ham's ground, the London Stadium, was I think just under 43,000, and that was based on 12 matches that they attended. Now the club say their average attendance is about 55,000. That's a massive difference, somewhere in the region of 12,000. Now I'm putting up a graphic on the screen so you can actually see and compare West Ham, City's and other clubs as well. Now you can see GMP's average figures were 7,500 lower than Manchester City's based on the 12 games that GMP, Greater Manchester Police, reported on. Now sadly the BBC report doesn't give enough information for a proper or accurate comparison to be made. They talk about what the club reports, the average attendance over the season, and compare it against the Freedom of Information average. Now, I think there are a few points you need to think about here. Initially my question was, is the club report for league games only? Or does that include all games, including cup games? And we know from past experience that cup games are notoriously poorly attended. But I suspect, looking at into more detail, it is just for the league games. Then I'll think about which games have GMP given the numbers for. Now, initially the BBC, in the body of the report, don't tell you, so it gets you wondering. As I said, were they including cup games? Are they including poorly attended games against lower league clubs? You know, let's be quite honest, people are more likely to come out for your big games like United and Liverpool and Everton and Chelsea and Arsenal and Spurs as well than they are to come for someone like West Brom or Burnley or Southampton, for instance. So yeah, I think that's another issue. Which games did they include? Now, in the body of the report, they don't say that, but later on, quite near the end, probably by the time people are getting bored, they do talk about some specific matches. Then I also ask myself, what account do they take of away clubs not selling their allocation? Now, one thing thrown at City fans for quite a few months or years is that we don't sell out our stadium. We actually sell our own home tickets. We actually do very well. I think we're about 97 or 98% occupancy, probably 4th or 5th in the league, somewhere I think same as Liverpool. So we're actually selling just about every ticket for the home end. We do have an issue sometimes with away fans not taking up their allocation, and I think even in the recent Newcastle game, you could see spaces in the Newcastle end. So, for example, if a team's been given 3,000 tickets and they only sell 1,000 tickets, then this 2,000 capacity, that's automatically not going to be reached, and it's absolutely no fault of the City fans themselves. And another question is, are these through the turnstile numbers? You know, do they include the corporates? Now, it's been mentioned on Twitter by a very reliable source that sometimes they don't include the corporate members. Now, the figures in the corporates are up to 5,000 that actually don't come through the normal turnstiles. And if they're not being reported, that's a massive impact on that 7,500 shortfall, and it takes it down to somewhere like 2,500. Like most clubs, City publicise tickets actually sold, not actually the number of people going into the ground through the turnstiles. As I said, that's normal for clubs across the board. So my next question is, why are fans staying away? Now, looking at it basically, why are 7,500, if we accept those numbers, why are 7,500 fans buying tickets and not turning up? If we take off the corporates, I mean, if that's a genuine mistake and the corporates are not being included, you're still between 2,000 and 2,500 fans are buying tickets and not turning up to games. Now, you've got to ask yourself, what are some of the reasons? Well, there's a few that I've thought of. One, our season tickets are really cheap. I mean, the cheapest season ticket now is still, for an adult, is still £299. And other season tickets, I think in the family stand, are probably 309 or somewhere in that region. And because they're so cheap, you might find that fans are picking and choosing because they're going to turn around and say, well, you know, this ticket's cost me about 17 or 18 quid. It doesn't matter if I don't go. I'm just going to go to the big games. I mean, I think that will happen with some fans. Some fans might just turn around and say, I'll watch it. If the game's on TV, I'm just going to watch it on TV instead. And then you've got the personal circumstances. People might have to work, they might be ill, whatever's gone on. And also, you've got to take into account kids as well, because, for instance, I think in some of the August games, you might not get as many people through the door purely because they're on holiday and they're abroad. They're not going to come back for a game of football. And also some of the evening games in midweek. Now, I generally don't take my kids to an evening game in midweek unless it's a school holiday because, let's be honest, we're not getting home till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I think my wife would probably string me up by my legs or even worse if I was taking my kids out till 11 o'clock on a school night. But when you get further down into the BBC report, quite near the end, they actually do go through some specifics. For instance, they say the Southampton reported crowd was about 15,000 more than what GMP, Greater Manchester Police, said for the same game. Now, that's a massive difference. But as I said before, there's this issue about corporates. Now, I simply cannot believe that we only had 48,648 people in the ground for the 5-0 win over Liverpool. We were both flying high at the time. I think the date was the 9th of September last year. So there were no school holidays. You can't use that as an excuse. And the GMP reported the 48,648, whereas City reported somewhere in the region of, I think it was 54,000. There's about a discrepancy of 5,500. And as I said, I just simply cannot believe those numbers. I just can't. The ground looked packed, it felt packed. There was so much noise, so much going on. I just really can't, as I said again and again and again, I just cannot believe that those figures provided by GMP to be 5,500 short is ridiculous. And as I said, that gives more credibility to the argument that the corporate numbers have not been included. If you include the 5,000 corporates, you're about 500 short. Yeah, that sounds more realistic. 500 people, for whatever reason, bought tickets and just couldn't make it to the game. So I think you've got to take these numbers sometimes with a pinch. No, I wouldn't say a pinch of salt, because there is some credibility to the numbers because they're coming from the council or the police, and I can't believe them to be massively way off. If you include those corporate numbers, then I don't think they're far away from the actual numbers that the club produce themselves. There's a PS here, guys. If you think it's just biased against City, or we're whinging because the numbers are so different and it gives people, it's fuel to the fire about criticism about not filling our stadium, etc. It's not. We're objective. If you look down at the bottom of the list, you might not have done that already. If you look down to the bottom of the list, GMP reports on Manchester United, and the difference between what the club say are in the ground is actually zero to what GMP say. Now, you've got to take that in for a second. Take it in. So every single person that Man United say were there, GMP agree. They concur over 12 games. There was zero difference over 12 games from what GMP's figures are and Man United's figures are. Personally, I find that hard to believe. And sadly, it does impact upon the credibility. I was hoping the credibility was good, decent enough to make a comparison and to ask questions and try and come up with answers and solutions. but right there in that last line, that the credibility is it's taken a kick to the nether regions, the credibility of this BBC report, in my opinion. And in fact, I'm actually left at the end with more questions than answers. It raises issues, and you can see and some points and some valid points, but that last line really, I'm giggling here because it just, as I said, it attacks the credibility of the whole report. Maybe we'll find find out some more news in the wash, and maybe one day we can speak to the person who was involved with this report, because I'm left puzzled and curious, and as I said, I'll be laughing for a few minutes after reading that line. So, on this point of not actually selling tickets or getting people into the grounds, getting bums on seats, so what is City actually doing about it? Well, I think some of the recent initiatives seem very, very good indeed. For the Champions League games, I think they're very competitively priced. The Lyon game next week is only £30 for adults for the cheapest seats, and I think one of the other games is down. I think the Shakhtar game is down to probably around £20 for the cheapest adult seat. Now that's, in today's terms, it's peanuts really, when you consider that a ticket for a league game might be 45, 50, 55 quid. To be able to get into a Champions League game for 20 quid, I think that's as cheap as chips. 5 quid for kids, absolutely fantastic. As I said before, it's an issue, kids going on an evening, on a school night, but 5 quid, that's really dirt cheap as well. And I think the initiative that City have implemented this season, and I think they did it towards the end of last season for the odd game, is so far this season, for all the 3 league games so far, they've allowed the concessionary tickets, concessionary season card tickets, like kids tickets, they've allowed an adult to go into the ground free of charge. So normally, if I want to upgrade my child's season card ticket to an adult, I have to pay the difference in price. Let's say, for argument's sake, that might be 35 quid, or 25, 35 quid, whatever it is. But for the Fulham game coming up this Saturday, for the Huddersfield game, and for the Newcastle game, they've allowed you to do that for free. So I think that's a great initiative, because there'll be games, like I said, where the kids can't make it for whatever reason. They've got their own sport, or they've got some activity on that particular day. And, sometimes adults will say, well, it's going to cost me 30, 35 quid to upgrade. And if people can't afford it, then they might not use that. And, in my personal circumstances, sometimes most of my mates are going to the game. There's only, it's very rare that I have, mates that are not going or can't afford it. Sometimes my brother-in-law's in town, and if I've got a spare ticket, one of my kids isn't going, then I can upgrade it and give it to him. But actually, when they're offering it free of charge, it's more likely that he's going to go, or somebody else is going to go. So I think there's a greater chance that you'll be able to have somebody else using that ticket if you're allowing these free upgrades. I think it's a great initiative. You've got to give the club a pat on the back for this, because I think it's brilliant. You know us, we say how it is. We're not here to criticise the club unnecessarily, and we're not here to praise the club unnecessarily. We just give our opinion, and I think that the opinion of most fans will be obviously very similar. It's a great initiative from the club, and I hope they can keep doing that regularly through the season. I can see for some of the big games against United and Liverpool, I can see them not doing that. It's fair dues. I think those tickets will be sold anyway. But it's a great thing, and as I said, I hope they can keep doing it for the rest of the season. Guys, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, what's stopping you? Dead easy. I say it every time. There's a big red button below the video. Just click on that and you subscribe. So simple. If you click on the bell icon, you'll be notified as soon as we make a new video, as soon as that's put out. And if you like the video, click like. It's always nice to get people saying they like what we're doing. And if you've got any comments, any opinions as to why fans are staying away, just make those comments in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your comments. And as usual, I think we reply to about 90% of all comments on our YouTube videos. Maybe the odd one or two we don't reply if they're if they're gone a bit, if they strayed off topic too far, or they're a little bit over the line in terms of being rude to us or City or anybody else. I think that's quite reasonable not to reply to those. But generally, genuine fans, they get a genuine response from us, just about every single one. See you around, Blues.